top right, this guy's been pretty tight, so I think I'm actually going to call with the king nine here in position. And just fold. I felt like if I jammed, he was going to snap call. And so, just because he's been pretty tight, I could be wrong. He may have snap folded. Just that micro stack game, quite short. A typical 3-bet jam stack that we have. He hasn't been opening much. He's only raising pre-flop raises. Well, first in is 5 or 49. 10% of hands. It's very, very tight. It's pretty rare to see someone playing that tight. And he did 2.5 exit. It just felt like he was snapping if I jammed with some sort of big ace or pair. King 9 suited is a hand that I would normally on aggressive stealers just jam without thinking in that spot. But I did alter my play based on that information that he looks like he's tight. Having said so, in that case, I mean, there's nothing wrong with calling with King 9 suited in position at that stack depth. And then trying to pick up the flush draw or the pair. We can flop top pair some of the time, and occasionally we will be dominated if he's got ace nine or king queen or something. But at the same time, a lot of the time those outs will be clean, and we can get value with them because the SPRs are going to be pretty bad for him. So if the flop comes, king 8-4, and he actually has nines or tens or jacks and something like that, and or even if it comes like a king 10, 2, and he's got ace 10, he's going to have a pretty hard time, I think. Not doubling us up, I think. On that board, he's probably going to c-bet, he might check, we bet, he calls. Same sort of thing top left. I mean, I'm just not sure how much fold equity we have, this stack depth against this guy, but this guy does steal a little bit more frequently, so we probably have a little bit. So I'm probably just going to jam now. We only started the hand at M5-ish, so certainly can never be bad. We're risking 9,000 to win 5, and we have pretty good fold equity, and we have obviously the second nut flush draw. And, queens and eights might be live too if he's got something like ace 5, 5, 6. So in light of what he's showed us, I don't know. I mean, he probably would have folded at pre if we jammed. But he still might not have king 6 against an M5 big blind jammer. He might make a loose call. Hard to say. But I think the way we played it is okay, and it's just unfortunate that we obviously ran into top pair because a lot of the time he's just got nutter. Or I mean, we could always get there. That could happen as well. We could hit the flush, but didn't this time. These stacks are dwindling. I might call there actually. It's a rebuy 7-8. M4, 9, 18, 27, 36, Queen 10, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Pretty close. Kind of right on. I think I was a gun shy because we busted with a Queen 10 earlier in a similar sort of spot. But it is pretty close to a break-even play. And could go either way with it. Kind of an obvious 3-bet bottom right, but I think even when it's obvious, it's still okay to take it. It's still okay. I mean, they're going to 4-bet jam you like this at decent frequency, but I think you still got to go for it. I mean, you can't just shut down and. Well, I mean, you can. If you think they're always going to 4-bet jam you, then you can just finally get a hand, if we can, that has good equity, and just snap it off and have them crushed. But, yeah, I mean, I think you just got to keep looking for opportunities and pounding on them. The other thing is, too, is if they see you 3-betting a lot, then when you do wake up with a hand, you can get paid off. It's a lot easier to get paid off. Bottom middle was rebuy, so I mean, just going to go for it. We've got a ton of equity as it is. We get there. And top left was kind of an interesting hand where I think that guy seems like just a huge fish that's doing like a limp raising, has a limp raising game with probably big hands. And at M5, a limp and then a raise like that looks to me like ace queen up, tens up. Also, the sizing is quite small. So I don't mind the way we played it, just trying to isolate small. I mean, I would have opened for a raise anyway. I mean, even if that guy had folded, I would have been opening on the button for the same amount. So it doesn't really cost us much extra, but we just had to isolate a fishy player in position. They are fairly short stacked, but at the same time, you know, we're just small balling it. We're putting pressure on them pre with a little raise. They're probably going to call most of the time. Well, you know, a lot. It's hard to see them limp folding to that raise size. But more we're just setting it up for post-flop with a semi-playable hand in position for a little c-bet. It's sort of just a lot of what you find in that sort of instance is where you just stab and they fold. So the flop comes, you know, queen 7-2, and they check. You just stab and they fold because they don't have a lot of chips left to play with behind, and they know that. And so they can't really do anything too out of line. This is pretty borderline bottom left, but I think I'm going to go for it. This guy's not that loose, but he is hijack. And we do have pocket threes, and we do have sort of an M8-ish stack, which is the ideal sort of jamming stack size. You know, he can have probably ace-10 up sort of thing and that sort of thing, and call king-queen suited and stuff. So, I mean, we can have the best hand some of the time. But it's obviously not great because a lot of his range will be the, you know, the bigger pairs. And from the point of him calling, I mean, obviously, we're going to be behind most of the time when he calls. Certainly not saying that we're going to be ahead of his range. We're obviously going to be a fair bit behind his calling range when we jam there. But the point is that when you add in all the times that he folds, the play becomes profitable. And I would think, anyway, that would be profitable. Presuming, you know, he does have a decent steal, you know, open fold, raise to steal and then fold into a re-steal type range, which everyone has. So the question is, how wide is it in that spot? And for that guy, it doesn't seem like it would be super wide, but we only have almost not even 100 hands on him yet, so it's hard to say. But just as sort of a default standard sort of attack a steal with M sort of 8, you know, that's small pockets of one hand that you might, well, any pocket really, you know, is a hand that you might have in that re-stealing attacking range. And yeah, I mean, it was close, I think, but we just need to get our hands on some chips, and jacks could be the hand to do that with. But honestly, this is our tight friend, and he's opened UTG. We only have M5, so I'm never folding, but, well, I mean, I think I'm ever folding. I mean, this guy would have to be even tighter than he already is for me to contemplate folding, I think. Just thinking if I ever could fold in this spot. I mean, if it was a bubble and a tight player opened with like a short stack UTG, I could, but I think in that spot, we just don't know enough about this guy yet to be that nitty. But yeah, when a tight player opens UTG, you got to consider what they might have. I think it's actually a mistake that a lot of players make, is they actually just see their stack size and the pot and just take a hand regardless of the action because they're short. Even when you're short, you still got to pay a lot of, you know, close attention to the action. I mean, if a guy opens UTG and he's being pretty tight and you're sitting, you know, in the cutoff with A7 suited, you don't just have to go, oh, you know, I'm M4, I've been M3.5, 4, I've been waiting, finally I got A7 suited, I'm just jamming this. You know, there's just like, I see a lot of players do that, especially at the lower stakes, and they just jam it in because they're like, well, I was short, you know, so I was going with my hand. But hey, what about the tight guy that's open UTG that's always got you crushed? Did you contemplate that for a moment? You know, so it's just important to keep that in mind. It's kind of pretty questionable, the open there, but yeah, went for it. And I think I'm just going to shove the nines here. M8, 1224. Yeah, it's pretty close again, I think. This is one of those spots where this guy, well, I mean, he's Brazilian, he's opening a fair range. Yeah, I take it back. He's going to be folding a lot. I was going to say it's one of those spots where he probably shouldn't have tons of, banana hands that are snap folding, but because he's in early position and he's M8, just M9, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think he actually still has tons of stuff that he's folding, and we have pocket nines, which obviously is going to have decent equity as well. Top left, I mean, it could go either way there. The guy's pretty short. He's opened early position. He's pretty tight. Folding is actually probably the best play. So we were in good shape with the nines to try and get some chips back, but it just hasn't been happening this month. I think just jamming here is probably okay. I mean, it's a fist pump jam in terms of hand strength, but just trying to work out if there's any more profitable option available. And I don't think there is. I mean, we can raise call, but the thing about raise calling with ace X and small pocket pairs is a lot of the times you let your opponent play a hand perfectly against you. I mean, if you steal with like M7 to call off with like ace3 suited, and the player jams like, you got ace3 hearts, and then the big blind jams on you with like, 8-10 of spades at like, well, I mean, say you're M6, 7, 8. I mean, a lot of those times, those hands actually have played the hand correctly because of the equity they have. And so the last thing, I mean, one thing that you don't want to do, and in Sklansky's books, he talks about the essence of poker is the playing your cards the way you would if you could see your opponent's cards. Is playing as best you can, and you want your opponents to be making mistakes. Is another way of looking at it. Is you want your opponents to be playing a way they shouldn't be playing, making mistakes. And so you don't force them to do that if you just try and steal short with ace X, which and small pockets, because you just never have them dominated. And so they're always playing the hand correctly, because when they're short, the pot odds from the initial raise and the blinds and antes that are already out there equate to a profitable situation for them with, a lot of hands. And so a lot of the times in that instance, it's best to do what I just did then and just shove it in, because you get hands like King 9 suited, and you get hands like 10 Jack suited, and hands that actually had the right price to either call or jam on you if you just raised. You get them to fold. It's true, you don't get... it's true that you only get action then from that point most of the time from better hands. But that's still not a big enough consideration to warrant, just because that's the flip side of that is, as I just said, there's no worse hands that are going to jam, and worse from the point of view of having your opponent dominated 12-3, 15. I mean, worse hands are going to jam, but correctly jam. Like Jack 9 suited jamming and against an M6 open against Ace Deuce off is bad. I mean, Ace Deuce doesn't want that. Not unless you want to play a high variance, risky game. You can definitely find better ways to accumulate chips. And more than that, like I said, your opponent's playing the hand correctly, so that can't be a good thing. You want them to play the hand bad, and we want to play our hand as well as we can. And if you jam pocket twos and your opponent folds King 9 suited in the big blind when you're M5 on the button, you've made him make a mistake. If he could see your cards, he should be calling. And that's really what it's all about. And if you strip away all this sort of 3 and 4 betting and 5 betting and 6 betting and equities and all this sort of GTO, and you strip all that back to the very sort of bare back to the skeleton. I mean, in essence, that's what we're talking about in poker. And I think that's why a lot of players can actually play, like your Ivies and Tonius. Man, and Tonius is a phenomenal player, and he's never read a poker book and studied the game, but he just has incredible instincts for the game. And the reason why that's the case, even though he probably doesn't have a clue what GTO is because, and I'm not saying, you guys have heard me talk about GTO before, you've heard me talk about how that's not the be-all and end-all and not that appropriate in MTTs especially, but you know, what I'm just really saying there is just like a mathematical, more sort of approach to the game. The thing that those players do so well is they just play their hands correctly. You know, if they just like they can see their opponent's cards sometimes. They just know what you have. They just hand read really well. And then they can just play their hand optimally and force their opponents to play their hand suboptimally. You know, which is actually what GTO is about. And so they're actually doing it without any, you know, formal study, but just from sheer instincts of being able to pinpoint opponent hands and accurately read situations. You know, whether it be live tells or just the betting patterns or just recollection from being in similar situations before, or just having some sort of, you know, uncanny instincts for, you know, that situations and being able to interpret maybe what their opponents want them to do and then doing the opposite, or they're just able to play at a really high level without any study. And that, I think, comes back to that bare roots again, you know, that sort of the skeleton, the framework, with the getting right back to the basics, you know. Play the hand as though you can see your opponent's cards. If you could see your opponent's cards, how would you play the hand? If you've played it that way, then you've played it optimally. You've played it as good as you can, as good as you possibly could. If you could have seen your opponent's cards and you wouldn't have played, you know, taken the line that you took, wouldn't have, you know, played the hand the way you did and donked off a stack, then you've probably, you know, made a big mistake. That was a pretty interesting situation there, top left, where I raised short to call a jam, but then when it gets 3-bet and jammed behind, I actually decided to fold and just keep M4. I don't normally do that, but that is one of the benefits of just raising rather than just jamming. I think this guy behind has been fairly tight. He's got a short stack UTG open, a middle position 3-bet, and then he jams. Yeah, I mean, he could have 9s or 10s, I guess. It's not impossible, but will be a bit of a fish. But at the same time, I just think we're just crushed in that spot so often. Having said that, we were getting pretty huge pot odds because it was a raise and then the jam behind, and we're only M4. So we maybe still could almost call, even if we thought he had a fairly nutty range. I might actually just whip out the calculator to look at that. What's going to actually complicate this a little bit is that the 3-better actually can sometimes call as well. But to simplify this process, let's just presume that the initial 3-better is always folding like he did, and just look at it just so we can actually do some analysis based on the range of the jammer. Just cannot win any flips today. These tourneys are just dropping like flies now. Just can't win any all-ins. So if we... Oh, wait. Which hand was it? That was up here, yeah. So I'm just going to bring that hand back down. Let's just pop it down here for a moment. So at this point, we're looking at 5,000. You know, he's only M5, right? So he actually could be doing what I was saying before, how players sometimes just go, oh, I'm short, I'm going with my hand. So let's just see if this was a mistake, and if so, if it was a big mistake or not. So it's 5-7 to call. I still can't believe this guy's 3-bet from here, mini, and then folded. That's gross. Because he's getting a ridiculous price to call, and he closes the action. That's a lot more grotesque than us folding. See if we can win a flip one time. Nope. Yeah, that's unfortunate, because we were getting kind of deep in that one. We're in the money. But, yeah, I mean, December hasn't been our month. Just all these keep hots and chances to accumulate chips seem to be going astray. But like I said, you know, this is part of the game, part of the variance. You just got to wait and have your turn. We had a little bit of run good in a couple of sessions last month. And hopefully we'll get it again soon. And sometimes even we won't get some run good, but we'll just be able to, you know, win anyway. Just from you know, outplaying opponents or whatever. And so here, let's just check this. So it's 57 to call to win 10,739. I'm just putting this into the calculator here, guys. Okay, so 5724 divided by memory read. So we only need 35% equity. I thought it would have been less than that. Have I done that right? Yeah, I think I have. 5-7 the call, total pot. Yeah, okay. So let's just say we need 35% equity. And we have ace jack off. And let's just give him a tight range and say nines, ace queen. Well, let's just presume what I would jam there if I was him. 15. I think we're going to have to take that one. So what would I jam? If I knew a player was M5 opening UTG and they were a decent player, a thinking player. Wow, I mean, it just looks so nutty. I mean, they just look like they have the nuts. Hence the nuttiness. Damn, we cannot get there. We cannot get there. Well, I mean, I would probably be worried and only want to jam nines up and, well, not even. I mean, it just looks so nutty. I mean, if I was jamming that range, then it's a fold. Because we only have 30% equity. We need 35-ish. But let's just say this guy isn't thinking like that. Let's just say he's a little bit loose. And he's like, okay, I've got a pair of sevens. I just have to roll. This guy's got it. He's got it. He's 10 suited as well. Put that in there. I mean, that's getting pretty loose. I mean, I think a jam of ace 10 suited in that spot against a UTG open and a min 3 and a 3-bet from mid, like a UTG M5, like 5-ish open and then a mini 3-bet from mid. I mean, one of the players looks like they're going to roll the nuts on you. So I think ace 10 suited is actually getting really fishy in that spot to be getting it in, but getting very loose. But let's just say he does do that. Then we actually get the right price with 37% equity. And we needed 35, so we have a couple of percent equity. But that's getting pretty out there. Let's just say he's really fishy. Let's just say he's really fishy and he's just like, well, I'm short, you know, I've got a pair, or I've got ace 10 or better. I mean, that's a pretty fishy range. I'm going with it. Now we have 42% equity, so that's obviously pretty huge. And a fist pump call. But again, I mean, I think even if we give him a sort of semi-loose-ish range, like say, I mean, I think this is sort of as loose as it's going to get, to be honest. I think that's as loose as it's going to get. So best case, we're going to have, I think, 37, which is a call. Average case, I think we're going to have 33, which is a fold. And if he's really reading the action, and he thinks that we're going to be nutty for sure, I mean, you could even argue that a player might only want to play taking this range in that spot. I don't think that's I mean, it looks incredibly tight, only 4% of hands, but I mean, an just under M5 UTG open and then a mini 3-bet from mid. I mean, it really looks like you're up against like queens and kings or aces or something. Like, It really does. As it is, we both folded, so it's just, I think, a very, very rare, you know, one of the very rare times that's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, the worst case, you're like, it's an easier fold, 28, only 28%, and we needed 35. So yeah, I mean, I think if the guy's hand reading and being very selective, I think definitely ace-jack is a fold. If he's somewhere in between and sort of kind of tight, thinks, hey, this guy's short and he's raised UTG, he must be strong. And then this guy's mid, he's 3-betting from mid, he must be really strong as well. I'm going to adjust my range and play a little bit tight. Then it's probably still a fold. And if he's just one of those guys that's like, hey, I'm short, I'm going with this hand, and he doesn't really care about the action, then it's an easy call. So it's just a matter of trying to work out which guy he is. And as you've heard me talking about before, that is just one of the challenges of the game. And perhaps the hardest part of the game, you know, is trying to work that out, because in MTTs there's such a mixed bag of players. And that's why the hard and, you know, the notes and the color coding that I use and all that's really important. You've got to make sure you're doing that. So, yeah, I mean, we'll finish off there. That hand, ace-king, I mean, I could have c-bet the flop there. I think it was okay to check. You know, both blinds in. A little bit of a connected board. We do have the backdoor club. Didn't want to get check raised off of it for sure. We could have perhaps gone into barrel mode, bet, you know, at any high card, any club. So definitely pretty close. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's just right on. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably normally do 3-bet it. Had I not been talking in depth about the last hand, I probably would have c-bet, but I certainly don't mind the check. I think it's fine. And then turn is a pretty bad card, because there's lots of hands that, you know, with 7 or an 8 or a jack, queen, jack, king. Someone could have hit the 10. Someone might have had 6-7 or 6-8 and just check the flop, but now not be folding to a turn bet. Pretty close, but I think if you're going to check flop, checking turn is trying to get to showdown or hit an ace or king is probably okay. As it is, the 7 brought a 1-card straight, guy bet, I folded. I had to play the hand again. Yeah, I mean, I normally would c-bet flop, just because, you know, any high card and any club we can barrel on pretty effectively, I think, against wide blind defending ranges. And that's what I would normally do. That's what you've normally seen me do. But, yeah, just threw in a check there and got a pretty bad board run out, so gave it up. So that is the end of that chapter, guys. This has been Acesup. Thanks for tuning in again. And after this break, back to battle.